Airports have a weird energy. Everyone's either rushing to something or leaving something behind. At Chicago O'Hare, the energy hits you like a wall, families reuniting with squeals and hugs, tired business travelers glued to their phones, and that one guy who's always somehow sprinting with a boarding pass clenched in his teeth. I was just standing still, holding a coffee I didn't even sip and a phone that wasn't mine. Celine, my wife, had left her phone in the cup holder of my car earlier that morning. She was in such a hurry to catch her flight to San Diego that she didn't even notice. Business conference, she had said. Real estate tech. 3 days, maybe 4. She kissed me on the cheek, said she'd call once she landed. She never did. Just a made it. Text around 10 p.m. That wasn't unusual. She'd been more distracted lately. Busier. Harder to pin down. I chalked it up to stress. The market was cooling and she'd mentioned layoffs happening across a few departments. So I didn't press. I wanted to believe she was just tired. And yet, here I was, 3 days later, standing under the buzzing lights of Terminal 3 watching strangers filter through the arrivals gate with more suspicion than a man picking up his wife should feel. I looked down at the phone in my hand. Her lock screen lit up every now and then, alerts, missed notifications, nothing strange. Until one caught my attention. Incoming airdrop request. Kai from the 9th floor wants to share a photo. For a second, I didn't even realize what I was looking at. It took a beat to register. Then instinct kicked in. I tapped accept. The photo slid onto the screen like a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. It was Celine, laying on a hotel bed, standard corporate decor, that neutral beige lighting, those weird abstract prints behind the headboard. She was angled in a way that suggested the photo was taken quickly. A half smile. Hair down. One hand holding the phone for the mirror selfie. But what took the wind out of me was the detail at the edge of the frame, a man's arm tattooed from wrist to elbow resting on the sheets beside her. Bare skin. No shirt. No pretense. Just presence. His arm. My breath caught. I studied it like it was a crime scene. My brain tried to logic its way out. Maybe it was an old photo, maybe it was staged, maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But then I noticed the timestamp. Tuesday night. 10:38 p.m. That same night, she texted me exhausted. Turning in early. Good night. I looked at the photo again. She didn't look exhausted. She looked comfortable. Like she was exactly where she wanted to be. I sat back, letting the phone fall to my lap. People moved around me in every direction, but the world had gone strangely quiet. A dull ring in my ears. That kind of sound your brain makes when it's buffering something your heart doesn't want to accept. Eventually, her flight landed. I saw her coming down the escalator, rolling her tiny navy suitcase behind her. She looked good. Casual. Her hair was up in a messy bun. White hoodie, leggings, sneakers. The kind of look she usually reserved for Sunday mornings and lazy movie nights. She smiled when she saw me. That same smile I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, warm, playful, the kind that made you feel like you were in on a secret. Hey, babe, she said, walking up to me and kissing my cheek. Thanks for coming. I handed her the coffee. Double sh tea, oat milk, no whip. She laughed. You're too good to me. I swallowed something bitter and forced a smile. You left your phone. Oh, shoot, did I? God, I've been tearing my bag apart looking for it since I landed. I didn't say anything. Just handed it to her. Back at the house that night, after she'd unpacked and taken a shower, I brought it up. Casually. Almost like I wasn't holding a live grenade. Hey, I said, sitting at the foot of the bed. Your phone got an airdrop earlier. From someone named Kai. Her face twisted slightly. Not fear. Not guilt. Just calculation. The briefest flicker of it. Oh, that, she said, glancing at the screen. God, that's just Kaya, he's on the tech team. Big prankster. Probably sent it by accident or as a joke. I tilted the phone. This looks like you. In a hotel room. With someone. She didn't even blink. It was probably during that group thing Tuesday night. We had drinks after the keynote. Everyone was being dumb. Maybe he photoshopped it or something. I waited. Let the silence do the talking. Eventually she shrugged, unbothered. Seriously, Jared? It's nothing. Just dumb work stuff. Okay, I said. I didn't push. Not then. Because sometimes silence is louder than confrontation. And when someone lies to you, they always think you're either too polite or too stupid to catch them in it. The truth is, I caught her the second the photo loaded. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. Celine fell asleep easily, which was almost offensive. She curled up beside me like nothing had happened, her arm brushing mine, her breath warm and steady. The kind of sleep you get when your conscience is clear, or when you're just good at pretending it is. Meanwhile, I lay on my back, eyes open, mind spinning like a ceiling fan on high speed. The airdrop. The photo. The arm. The timestamp. It all kept replaying in my head like a bad home movie on loop. I'd close my eyes for a second and the image would flash again, her, in that hotel bed, hair a little messy, tank top sliding off her shoulder, looking into the mirror like she was sharing a private joke with someone who wasn't me. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over. Why now? Who is he? How long has this been going on? But what hit me hardest wasn't the unknowns. It was what I already knew deep down and had been trying to ignore. The signs had been there for months. I just hadn't wanted to see them. It started subtle. She began setting her phone face down every time she put it on the table. At first, I thought nothing of it. Then I noticed the little flinches, how she'd reach for it quickly if I got too close, how she started keeping it in her back pocket instead of leaving it on the nightstand. And the passwords changed. I only noticed because I used to know them, all of them. We never had secrets before. That had always been our thing, radical honesty. Until it wasn't. Then there was the shift in her routine. She started going out more, claiming work dinners or networking events. She came home late smelling like hotel shampoo and unfamiliar cologne. One night, she walked through the door wearing a smoky leather jacket I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she said she'd borrowed it from a coworker because it got cold on the rooftop. She said it so casually like it was no big deal. But the scent clung to her skin long after she changed out of it. I don't remember what we had for dinner that night. I only remember trying not to ask too many questions. We used to eat together. Every night. We had this tradition. I'd cook, she'd set the table, and we'd talk about work, weird dreams, TikToks that made her laugh until she snorted. But around February, that stopped. She started eating at her desk or claiming she wasn't hungry. Sometimes she'd come home with to-go containers she said were leftovers from client lunches. I once found one in the trash that had a note written on the lid, "See you soon, winky face." I asked who it was from and she said it was a joke from a waitress who recognized her from a past visit. Maybe that was true. But I doubt it now. Even her scent changed. For years, she swore spicy perfume gave her migraines. She used to mock the samples people sprayed on us at department stores. "I don't want to smell like an expensive campfire," she'd say. Then suddenly she started wearing something bold. Sultry. Amber and musk and something sweet beneath it. I asked once if it was new and she said, "Just trying something grown-up." I wanted to laugh. But it didn't feel funny. It felt like watching her become someone I didn't know. The red flags weren't neon. They were beige. Subtle. Easy to excuse when you love someone. Easy to overlook when you're trying not to look too closely. There was the night she left for a girls' weekend with her old college roommates. I offered to drop her off at the airport and she said, "I already called a rideshare. Don't worry about it." She kissed me like she was in a rush and disappeared into a car I didn't recognize. The whole weekend I barely heard from her. A couple of photos on her Instagram story, mimosas, ocean views, a blurry sunset with the caption, "Needed this." She came home on Monday with a sunburn, a new bracelet, and a tan line where her wedding ring used to be. She claimed she'd taken it off so it wouldn't get lost in the ocean. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe all of it. The problem with suspicion is that once it starts, it doesn't stop. It eats everything. I began noticing the way she touched me less, how she pulled away faster from hugs. I started hearing every sigh as a sign, every glance at her phone as a betrayal waiting to be confirmed. One night, I cracked. She was in the shower and I picked up her laptop. It wasn't locked. That felt like a mercy but also a trap. I opened her browser. No secret tabs. Her email was logged in. I scanned the inbox, nothing that screamed affair, but I did see a name that kept popping up, Kai. The same name from the airdrop. Kai from the 9th floor, she'd said when I asked. He's in tech. Bit of a prankster. Funny how that name had suddenly appeared in her world without a proper introduction. I clicked on one of the emails. It was short. Casual. Too casual. Had fun Tuesday. Hope your neck's feeling better, winky face. That was it. No attachments. No long love letters. But it was enough. I closed the laptop and went to bed pretending I hadn't just watched my own life slowly unravel. In the days that followed, I couldn't unsee it. The distance. The detachment. She'd get dressed for work in clothes that felt more curated, more polished. Heels she never wore for me. New lip color. She'd stand in the mirror turning this way and that, checking angles I never got to see. One evening I asked, "Are you happy?" She paused mid-mascara stroke and said, "What kind of question is that?" "I mean with us. With this." She didn't answer right away. Just finished her makeup and said, "You always do this when I'm already running late." Then she grabbed her bag, blew me a kiss, and left. It was the kiss that broke me. Because it wasn't a kiss. It was a gesture. A placeholder. Like I was her roommate who paid rent on time and occasionally brought home groceries. That's what I'd become, an accessory to her life, not a partner in it. I started spending more time alone. I'd sit in the garage, pretending to organize tools I never used. Or I'd walk around the neighborhood at night, just to clear my head. I'd look at the other houses, the warm lights behind drawn curtains, and wonder how many other people were living like I was, suspecting, hurting, pretending. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh from another room and wonder who she was talking to. She'd say just work stuff if I asked. But her phone was always in her hand, thumb moving quickly, screen tilted away from view. The night before she returned from San Diego, I cleaned the house like a man trying to earn something. I put new sheets on the bed, lit a candle, stocked her favorite snacks. I even set out her fuzzy slippers by the door. When she walked in, she smiled and said, "You didn't have to do all this." But she didn't say thank you. That's when I knew. Somewhere along the way, I had become someone she didn't choose anymore. Not out loud. Not officially. But quietly in the small, slow ways that matter most. And now? Now I couldn't stop choosing her over and over in my head, even when she'd already stopped choosing me. I wasn't supposed to be home that night. My flight to Austin was scheduled for that morning, business trip, for days, site visits, contractor meetings. Celine had kissed me goodbye while pretending to still be half asleep. "Good luck, babe," she mumbled into her pillow. I said I'd text when I landed, but I already knew I wouldn't be on that plane. Because 2 nights before, I'd made a decision. I canceled my trip, delayed it without telling her. Something in my gut, something raw and ancient, told me the time for watching from a distance was over. I needed to know. Needed to stop feeding myself half-truths and start facing the one thing I wasn't ready for, confirmation. When you're holding a puzzle with pieces that don't fit, there comes a moment you stop forcing them and start asking what picture you're really building. That night, I parked 2 blocks away from our house. It was a soft, quiet evening. Spring had barely started to bloom, but the wind still had a bite. Our neighborhood was sleepy, porch lights on, windows glowing with TV flicker. The kind of place where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. But I knew better. I stood in front of the house for a long time before I walked in. All the lights were off downstairs except one lamp in the hallway. The kind of light people leave on to make it look like someone's home. But the silence inside was telling. I knew she wasn't expecting me. She thought I was in another state hundreds of miles away. That mattered. I moved quietly, not to be sneaky, but because something inside me had gone still. Halfway up the stairs, I heard voices. Not clear. Just a soft murmur, a rhythm of conversation, 2 people trying to keep quiet, trying not to wake the house. But this was their mistake. I was the house. I paused, 1 foot on the step, 1 hand gripping the rail. There were 2 wine glasses sitting on the staircase ledge. One of them had lipstick on the rim. The other had been refilled twice, judging by the drips on the side. A bottle of red was open in the hallway. Her favorite. Mine had been untouched for weeks. I didn't call out. Didn't ask questions. I just walked forward. The door to the bedroom wasn't shut all the way. A sliver of light spilled onto the carpet. I could hear her now, Celine's laugh. That laugh? The one she hadn't used with me in months. It was soft, flirtatious. I hadn't even known she still had it. When I opened the door, the world didn't explode. There was no screaming, no panic. Just a frozen moment, like someone pressed pause. Celine was on the edge of the bed, a wine glass in her hand. Next to her, him. Shirtless. Relaxed. Tattooed. The same man from the photo. Same arm, same ink, same familiarity. He was sitting close, not caught in the act, but caught in the moment before it. She looked up. Her face didn't crumble. Didn't flush with shame. Just paused. As if this wasn't a surprise. Just an inconvenience. "Oh," she said. "That's it. 1 word." The guy stood, grabbing his shirt from the chair. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He knew exactly what this was. I looked at her and she looked at me. I waited for excuses, for denial, for the word misunderstanding. None came. There was a second when I thought I'd say something dramatic, something poetic, like, "How long has this version of you existed? Or was I ever enough for you? Or just something to fill time between other men?" But nothing came. Just silence. I turned around, walked out, down the stairs, past the wine, past the framed photo of us from a trip to Aspen, smiling in wool scarves, 2 people who had no idea who they'd become. I stepped out into the night and closed the door behind me without slamming it. That was the moment. The one I think will stay with me the longest. Not the betrayal. Not even the confirmation. But the quiet. The unbearable, unmistakable quiet. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel like I might crush it. My heart was beating, but everything else felt numb. Couldn't even cry. It was like my body had shut down every system not immediately needed for survival. I stared at our porch light until it looked unfamiliar. Inside that house was a woman I loved. Loved so much that I rearranged the architecture of my life to make room for hers. And she had carved out a new room for someone else while I was still living inside it. I should have felt rage. Instead, I felt clarity. That's the thing about truth, it doesn't always hit you like lightning. Sometimes it arrives like morning fog, rolling in quietly, making everything else fade away. I thought about the last time she said, "I love you." Really said it. Not the passing "love you" at the end of a phone call. Couldn't remember. That realization hit harder than the photo, than the man, than the wine. Because love doesn't just leave one day. It fades. Slowly. Then all at once. The next morning, she texted me. "Celine, I can explain." No, she couldn't. Not because I wouldn't listen, but because there was nothing left to say. The explanation wasn't words. It was wine glasses on stairs. It was her breathless laugh with someone who wasn't me. It was the emptiness I'd felt for months that she had already filled without asking. People think betrayal is one sharp moment. It's not. It's dozens of tiny choices. One turn back. One unanswered text. One lie about a meeting. One kiss that didn't happen because you already gave that kiss to someone else. I drove. Nowhere, really. Just away. An hour outside Chicago, I pulled off into a gas station and bought a water I didn't drink. Sat on the hood of my car and watched the sun come up behind a row of trucks. I thought about calling my brother, my best friend, even my dad. But I didn't. I wasn't ready to hear my own story said out loud. I needed time to process not just that she cheated, but that I had known. Deep down. For weeks. Maybe months. My silence hadn't been ignorance. It had been denial. I kept trying to be the guy who gives space, who's patient, who doesn't jump to conclusions. But she hadn't earned that. Trust isn't unconditional. It's rented. And she stopped paying rent a long time ago. Eventually, I drove back into the city. Didn't go home. Booked a hotel near the lake instead. Checked in under a name that wasn't mine. Not to hide, but because it felt easier to pretend, just for a night, that I was someone else. Someone who hadn't just walked into his own bedroom and found a stranger sitting in his place. That night, I laid in a room with stiff white sheets and thought about all the times I told myself, she's just tired, or she's under pressure, or this is just a phase. But it wasn't. It was a pattern. One I hadn't seen until it became too obvious to ignore. And now I was done ignoring. They say time heals. What they don't tell you is that time doesn't do anything without your permission. You have to drag yourself through the healing process, clawing out of grief inch by inch while pretending to function like a normal person. That's where I was. 2 weeks after walking in on my wife and her half-dressed companion, pretending to be fine in grocery store checkout lines and nodding politely when people asked how work was going. Celine didn't reach out much after her initial, "I can explain" text. A few attempts, sure. But she knew, and I didn't respond. I think that silence scared her more than shouting ever could. I didn't go back to our house. I paid movers to box my things. I didn't want to see the couch we bought together. Didn't want to smell her perfume in the hallway or find my old t-shirts folded in drawers like relics from a museum titled Before Everything Fell Apart. I rented a one-bedroom loft downtown. Minimalist, quiet, no shared closets, no history. I worked. I ran. Ate. I slept. I didn't feel much, which at the time felt like progress. Then came the reunion. Northwestern's 10-year alumni get-together. I almost didn't go. I got the email invite weeks prior and deleted it without reading past the subject line. But 2 days before the event, my old college roommate, Dylan, called me and said, "You're coming, right? I already RSVP'd for both of us." Don't make me regret that. I didn't have an excuse, so I went. The venue was nice. Converted library, rooftop cocktails, name tags that felt a little too and asterisk mate for people who barely remembered each other. I walked in, and the first face I saw was someone I hadn't spoken to since senior year. They smiled, asked about Celine. I said, "We're no longer together," and watched their smile shrink like plastic in a fire. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Of course they didn't. Nobody did. That was the whole point. Then, as if summoned by awkward timing and dramatic irony, Celine appeared. She was laughing, glowing, dressed in a deep green jumpsuit that made her look like the version of herself that always existed at parties. Sparkling, magnetic, untouchable. She hadn't seen me yet. She was surrounded by a few former classmates and someone I didn't recognize. A tall guy in a tailored blazer. Maybe a new boyfriend. Maybe a placeholder. Didn't matter. I kept my distance. Not out of fear. Just calculation. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't even want closure. I just wanted to see what she looked like when she thought no one was watching her lie anymore. And then it happened. She saw me. Her face changed. Not with guilt, but with strategy. That's what it looked like. She touched the guy's arm, whispered something, and started walking toward me like this was a networking event instead of the aftermath of emotional war. "Jared," she said, warmly, like we were old friends. "Celine, you look good," she added. "Austin must be treating you well." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't go to Austin." She blinked, thrown. That told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't kept track. She'd been banking on old information, assuming I'd be elsewhere, absent as always. "Oh, well, good to see you." "You too." I was ready to walk away when she said, with a laugh that carried just a bit too far across the room, "You know, Jared always said he liked to keep things simple, like his taxes, or his salary." There it was. A joke. A little jab. Right in front of a group of people who didn't know anything about what she'd done. They laughed. I didn't. And I didn't say anything in return. I just gave her a small nod and walked away. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 2 weeks earlier, the construction company I helped co-found acquired the boutique architecture firm where her friend with the tattoos worked. Quietly, legally, entirely above board. It wasn't planned that way. Life just has a way of handing you the pen and daring you to write something sharp. I didn't fire him. That would have been obvious. What I did was sign off on a reorg, a restructuring. Departmental budgets were reviewed. Teams were shifted. Positions eliminated. The following morning, I got a message from HR. One of the names affected? Her best friend, Mia. The one who always vouched for her, who used to tell me Celine was loyal, just independent. The same Mia who once told me I was lucky to have her. Mia's position was dissolved. Not by me directly, but because it made sense. Her department had been underperforming for over a year, and the numbers didn't lie. I didn't smile when I saw the notice. Didn't gloat. I just closed the email and went for a run along the lake. Some people might call it revenge. I don't. It was business. But it was also the first time in months I felt the ground shift under my feet, instead of hers. Control. That's what betrayal takes from you. It doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes you. Makes you question your memory, your instincts, your worth. But that morning, watching the sun burn through the fog, I felt something I hadn't felt since the airdrop. Power. Not the destructive kind. The kind that comes from remembering who you are after someone tried to rewrite your story without your consent. Later that week, Celine texted me. "Celine, did you have something to do with Mia being let go?" I waited an hour before replying. We're in a restructuring phase. Nothing personal." She didn't respond. And just like that, the silence became mine again. But this time, I welcomed it. I started waking up earlier. I stopped checking her social media. I deleted the folder on my laptop labeled evidence and cleared the recycle bin. Because I didn't need evidence anymore. I had truth. And I had distance. People think power comes from having the last word. But sometimes, the real power is knowing you don't need to say anything at all. The rental was nothing special. 2 stories, gray siding, a stone path leading up to a door that stuck when you closed it too gently. It smelled like fresh paint and old wood and silence. The kind of silence that feels earned. The kind that doesn't rush to fill the room. It was 2 hours from the city just outside Lake Erie. I found it listed under long-term furnished on a site for traveling consultants. It had a fireplace, a small deck facing the water, and a worn leather armchair that squeaked when I shifted my weight. I signed the lease without telling anyone. Not because I was hiding, but because no one needed to know. I wasn't running from Celine. I wasn't punishing myself, either. I was stepping into whatever came next without needing a tour guide. The first night there, I slept through until morning for the first time in months. No dreams. No fists clenched under the pillow. Just breath. In and out. The next morning, I made coffee and stared out at the lake. The water was still, broken only by the occasional ripple of a breeze. It looked like peace even if I didn't feel it yet. A few days later, a message came from Celine. Celine, can we talk? Just that. No emoji. No, hope you're well. No attempt to soften the edges. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. There's something about heartbreak that rewires your brain. Things that once mattered become weightless. Memories you use to cling to become smoke. That's what happened with me and Celine. Not all at once, but slowly, like the last coals of a fire going cold. I spent the next few weeks sorting through the things I'd brought from the city. Not furniture, not clothes. The other stuff. The drawer full of receipts from our trips. The books with her sticky notes in the margins. Our wedding photo album wrapped in tissue paper. A bundle of anniversary cards tied with ribbon. And the vows. I found them at the bottom of a moving box marked office. They were tucked into the same leather folder we'd used on our wedding day. Hers were printed, neatly formatted in a serif font with bolded section headings like My Promises and Our Future. Mine were handwritten on cream-colored stationery with ink that had bled a little from my sweaty palms. I read hers first. She promised laughter. She promised support during career changes. She promised to never keep secrets unless it was about a surprise party. That line got a laugh from our guests back then. Now, it read like a punchline with no air behind it. Then I read mine. I had written about quiet loyalty. About how I would show up not just when it was convenient, but when it was hard. I wrote that I'd never stop choosing her, even when we got boring, even when life got hard, even when she didn't believe she was worth choosing. Reading them felt like watching someone else's life. The man who wrote those words didn't exist anymore. He'd been hollowed out and rebuilt. Not stronger. Just different. I folded the vows back up, held them for a while, and then I walked to the fireplace. I lit them. First hers. Then mine. I watched the pages curl and blacken, the words warping into ash. For a second, the flame hesitated, like even the fire needed a moment to process what it was destroying. Then it finished its job, leaving behind nothing but dust and heat and silence. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, hand open, watching the last bit of smoke disappear into the flue. It felt like a ritual. Not revenge. Not closure. Just release. I spent the rest of the week rebuilding my life in small ways. I bought groceries that only I liked. Rearranged the kitchen so the mugs I used most were at eye level. I donated the throw pillows she'd insisted we buy. They tie the room together because the room didn't need tying anymore. At night, I walked along the shoreline. Sometimes I'd see couples on the beach. Young ones, old ones. Holding hands. Laughing. Arguing. Loving each other in the open. I didn't envy them. I didn't even compare myself to them. I just watched like a man who used to speak a language fluently and now only remembered pieces. One night, I opened the guest book the rental owner had left behind. Mostly tourists. Notes like, thanks for the great weekend, or the stars were amazing last night. But one entry stood out. A woman named Teresa had written, I came here to mourn someone. I left remembering myself instead. That one line stayed with me. I wrote nothing in return. Just flipped to the back page, stared at the blankness, and decided to let it speak for me. By the end of that month, the message from Celine had drifted to the bottom of my inbox. Unread. Untouched. And that's when I knew I wasn't angry anymore. Not because I forgave her, but because I finally stopped making her the center of a story that had always been mine to write. Letting go isn't one big dramatic decision. It's thousands of small ones. Choosing not to check her socials. Choosing not to drive past our old street. Choosing not to open messages sent too late, too little, too after the fact. Choosing yourself. Some people burn photos. I burn vows. Because that's what held the ghost together. That's what kept me haunted. Promises made by two people who no longer existed, clinging to a contract that expired the moment one of us stopped showing up. It wasn't sadness I felt when I dropped that ash into the trash bin. It was air. Weightless. Cold. Honest. Like wind coming through a broken window. Uninvited but necessary. Weeks passed. Celine's messages got shorter, colder, until one day it wasn't her who called. It was him. The tattooed guy. His voice cracked with something like regret. Said she was already seeing someone else. That he thought it meant more. I didn't say a word. Just listened until he stopped talking. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't even hurt. I just felt finished. The truth wasn't a knife anymore, it was a mirror. She hadn't just slipped. She had a pattern. One branch to the next. Never still long enough to look down. But I wasn't the one falling anymore. 6 months later, I was running again. Not to escape, but to return. I changed my number. Emptied my inbox. Poured myself into a project building homes for veterans. At a design expo, I saw her. Alone. She didn't notice me. Didn't flinch. And that absence of recognition, it felt symbolic. Celine had never been who I thought. And I was no longer the man she left behind. I hadn't won. I hadn't lost. I'd simply stepped out of the storm and remembered who I was before her. And for the first time in years, that was enough.